Let's dive into the story of Naaman the Syrian. It's one of the most famous healing miracles ever told, for sure. But what if I told you that on a deeper level, it's really a powerful parable about human pride and the kind of faith that truly transforms someone? By breaking this story down, we can actually see a reflection of our own hearts and how we respond to truth.
So, first, let's meet the man himself, Naaman. This guy was living two completely different lives. On the outside, he was the commander of the Syrian army, a huge deal. He was a celebrated warrior, respected, basically an idol to his people. But underneath all that armor, he was hiding a dark secret, a degenerative skin disease, probably leprosy, that was slowly killing him. All the fame and glory in the world couldn't stop him.
So where does hope come from in this desperate situation? Well, not from a king or a doctor, but from the last place you'd ever expect. A young Israelite girl, a captive slave living in Naaman's own house. Think about that. Even though she'd been torn from her home, she had this simple, unshakable confidence that a prophet of her God back in Israel could cure her master. It's this tiny spark of faith that gets the whole story rolling.
Naaman, desperate for a cure, grabs onto this tiny sliver of hope and starts his journey. But his quest first leads him through the halls of power, and this is where we see worldly pride and human systems just fail spectacularly.
Naaman's first stop is his own king, Ben-Hadad of Syria. And you'd think the king would want to help his best general, right? Nope. The king's response is purely political. He doesn't see a chance for healing. He sees a weapon. Instead of sending Naaman to the prophet the girl mentioned, he sends him directly to the king of Israel with this demanding letter. He's deliberately creating a trap, a no-win situation designed to provoke a war.
And this right here, this is our first connection to that famous parable of the sower. The seed is that word of hope from the servant girl. But for King Ben-Hadad, it's like it landed on hard-packed soil, like a path. He doesn't even consider its real meaning. His political cynicism immediately snatches it away, and he twists it for his own destructive agenda.
So when this letter lands on the desk of Israel's king Jehoram, he completely panics. He sees the trap for exactly what it is, and his reaction is just total despair. He literally tears his clothes, crying out, "Am I God?" Because he'd already turned his back on God in his heart, he feels totally powerless. All he sees is a political threat, not a divine opportunity.
And King Jehoram is a perfect picture of the second type of soil from the parable, the rocky ground. Any faith he might have had was super shallow, with no deep roots to hold on to. So the moment a real test comes along, a time of intense pressure, his belief just withers and dies. He can't see any possibility of a miracle, only the certainty of human conflict.
Okay, so the kings are totally dropping the ball. But just as the worldly powers are failing, the real power in this story finally shows up. The prophet Elisha hears about the king's panic and steps in. This is the turning point, where the focus shifts from kings and armies to a direct and deeply challenging test of one man's humility.
So picture this. Naaman rolls up to Elisha's humble home with his whole entourage. Horses, chariots, the works. He's a VIP, and he has very specific expectations. He thinks the prophet will come out personally, perform some grand ritual, call on his God, and heal him in a big ceremony worthy of his status.
Yeah, that's not what happens. Not even close. Elijah doesn't even bother coming to the door. He just sends a messenger out with a stark, simple, and honestly pretty insulting command. Go wash yourself 7 times in the muddy Jordan River. No ceremony, no grand gestures, just this simple, almost absurd instruction.
And Naaman just loses it. He is furious. See, this isn't really about the weird command. It's about his wounded pride. He scoffs that the beautiful, clean rivers back home in Damascus are way better than this murky Israelite river. His own logic tells him this is ridiculous. He gets so angry that he turns his whole convoy around, ready to go home and die in his disease rather than be humiliated like this.
And who talks him down? Not a king, not a prophet, but his own servants. They gently appeal to his reason with this simple, brilliant question. They basically say, look, boss, if the prophet had told you to do some great heroic thing, you would have done it in a heartbeat. So, why not this simple thing? Their logic just cuts right through his rage and pride. And you know what? He listens. He makes a choice. He decides to humble himself and obey a command that makes 0 sense to his warrior's mind. And that one single act of obedience leads to something incredible. Not just healing, but a complete and total transformation. And the change is just,
Whoa, it's night and day. He goes to the Jordan, dips himself 7 times, and his skin is restored, becoming like that of a young child. But the physical healing is only the beginning. He goes from being a self-serving warrior to a servant of God, from a worshiper of idols to a man who declares, "Now I know there is no God in all the earth except in Israel." He's physically and spiritually reborn.
And there it is. Naaman is our good soil. He heard the word, and yeah, his pride fought against it, but ultimately he clung to it with a changed heart. And because of that, his life produced amazing fruit, healing, true humility, and a powerful new faith.
But just when you think we've got our happy ending, the story takes a dark turn. Just as we see this incredible triumph of faith in an outsider, we get a tragic twist involving an insider, Elisha's very own servant, a man named Gehazi. And this part serves as a final, chilling warning.
So after Naaman is healed, he's so grateful, he tries to give Elisha all this treasure, silver, fine clothing, but Elisha refuses. He won't take any payment for God's miracle. But Gehazi, he's watching all this wealth walk away, and he just can't stand it. He secretly runs after Naaman's convoy, makes up a lie, and scams him out of a huge amount of silver and 2 sets of clothes.
And the irony here is just devastating. You have Naaman, the Gentile, the outsider. He ends up healed and humbled. And then you have Gehazi, the ultimate Israelite insider. He becomes greedy and is cursed. In a terrible, tragic reversal, the very leprosy that left Naaman now clings to Gehazi and his descendants forever.
So Gehazi, he's our final type of soil. This is a guy who heard the word of God every single day, living right there with the prophet. But the thorns, the worries of the world, and the seductive desire for riches grew up and completely choked that word out. His life, which could have followed in the footsteps of the prophet, yielded nothing but a curse.
So in the end, you've got this one story of healing that reveals 4 totally different hearts: a cynical king, a fearful king, a greedy servant, and a humbled warrior. And it leaves us with a really critical question. When we're confronted with a simple, humbling truth that challenges our pride, which one of these responses looks the most like our own?